Hey boys and girls, welcome back to the art table, and today we are going to talk about one of my favorite things. We're going to talk about traveling, and specifically we're going to talk about maps. So this project is kind of based on the printmaking project that I do with my first grade friends, where we design a map. First grade friends, you had just started this, some of you, right before we left school. So we're going to kind of do a project that's sort of based on that. This project has a lot of steps, and I'm going to break it down into sections. So what's really cool about the way that we're going to do this here is I'm going to be able to break it up into sections. And if you decide, hey, Mrs. Hagen, I don't want to do that part, you just skip that section and then fast forward to the next part. We're going to break this up into 5 parts. And if we were doing this project at school, we would not be doing it in 1 week. So if you just want to do a little bit at a time and then come back and finish later, that's okay. If you're like, nah, Mrs. Hagen, I want to do this whole thing right now, as long as you have time to do it, go for it. And it's kind of an easy project. It's also a lot of fun. So I hope that you enjoy this. And what you will need to do this project is a couple pieces of paper if you're going to do all of the steps, some crayons or pencils, and maybe a pair of scissors, again, if you're going to do all of the steps on different pieces of paper. You could do every step on the same piece of paper. I'm choosing to do mine in different parts so I can really show you lots of details on each section. Okay, are we ready to get started? All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is an introduction to maps. What are maps and why are we talking about them in art class? Okay, so what are maps? Most of you know exactly what a map is. You've seen them before. It's a thing that shows a geographical location and information about that geographical location. Right, so up here we have a map of the world, which is this one up here. Okay. We have a map of the United States. This one's actually of roads that are important. And we have a map of Virginia, which some of you might have seen in social studies class that shows the regions of Virginia. They are maps of geological places to show information. Now, this can get a little bit boring, and you're probably thinking, Mrs. Hagen, why would we be doing this in art? This is not what we will be doing. Maps also used to be works of art. This is actually a map from the 1400s, and it is all about coming to the New World and things that were on the way there. So you can see lots of the land masses that were there, but then there's also this really cool artwork in between. And a special person that did this kind of artwork was called a cartographer. This is actually a modern painting of what a cartographer might have looked like. So you can see the guy in the hat here is making the map, and then maybe this is his friend that's helping with like the actual distances and things. But this used to be an actual job. Your job as an artist was to make maps if you were a cartographer. And this is still a job that exists. It's a little bit more technical now, but it is still something that you can do if you're interested. And here are 2 older maps that show lots of information. They are actually by the same 2 cartographers. And you'll notice that one is of the Earth and the other one's the Moon. So cartographers don't just map places on Earth, they map places in other locations as well. In fact, for this project, maybe you choose to map a location that doesn't even exist. Maybe for your project, you choose to make up a place. Or maybe you map a place that's from a book that you've read, or you make a map of your backyard. Maybe you make a map of your bedroom. There's lots and lots of different things that you can make a map of for this project. You still follow all the same steps that I'm going to show you. In my project, I'm actually going to be doing a map of a trip that Mr. Hagen and I took to London. So it's going to be a storytelling map, a lot like the project my first grade friends are doing. And here are some artistic maps. Maps aren't just about sharing information. Sometimes they're about art. So in this particular one, this is the name of all of the countries to make the country. So Canada makes the word Canada, and it's in the shape of Canada. the United States. And some of you might be saying, yeah, but Mrs. Hagan, that's not how you spell Russia or China or Australia or Brazil or the United States. It would be because the artist that created this is from France, so it's in French. Here's another artist who made a map of traveling down the coastline with her dog. You can see the puppy on all of the spots. And this is just a mind map. So maybe the project that you choose to do today isn't even a map, it's a thought process map like you would do in Strategies Lab, because even that can be done in an artistic way. So let's move on to learning the parts of our map. So the second part we're going to talk about is called the compass rose. And the compass rose is the part of the map that shows you which direction your map is facing. So no matter what you are kind of choosing to do for your project, you might want to have something on it that shows which direction it is, what's north, what's south, what's east, what's west. That whole directional thing that we learn about in social studies. All right, so what is a compass rose? A compass rose is the part of the map that shows the direction that the map is facing. It shows us which way north is, which way south is, and west and east. And they can be very, very simple. They can be a little bit more complex, or they can be super fancy. If you are interested in seeing more examples of compass roses, you can go ahead and do a little bit of research. All right, so now that we know what a compass rose is, we are going to talk about how to make one. Now, if you're just making a really, really simple one, maybe you don't make it on another piece of paper. Maybe you just make it on your map paper, and that's very, very, very easy to do. A simple compass rose is just a plus sign, and then you show where north is, just like I did on my other paper. And if you want to, you can put the other directions on there. Remember, north is usually shown at the top, south is usually shown at the bottom, and then west and east you can remember because they spelled the word we. At least that's how I remember it. You can start making a little bit more of a fancier compass rose if you want to. You can start with a circle and start adding more details. If you are really interested in making your compass rose something really fancy, or maybe you want to look up cartographers that come from an area of the world where you come from and to kind of learn more about their style, go ahead and do some research. This is a fun project to do a little bit of research on. Just like everything else though, make sure that it is okay with your grown-up before you start looking around for things. All right. And if you want to make it super, super, super fancy, go for it. This is your map project. You can make your compass rose as interesting or not interesting as you want to. You can color it in. You can leave it black and white. All of that is up to you. I'm actually going to color mine in a little bit. Just pick a couple of colors and make it kind of interesting. Like I really want people to be able to tell where my north is. I'm going to use this one over here for my actual project. And you could design a whole bunch of compass roses and then just pick the one you like best for your project. That is totally up to you. Or, like I said, you could just pick a very, very simple one, or maybe you don't even want to have a compass rose on your project. And that is okay as well. So go ahead, guys, and find some place to work on your compass roses if you're choosing to have one. And when you're done, come on back for the next step. And if you're choosing not to have a compass rose, you can just go ahead and skip on to the next part. I'm going to finish up my coloring here and then set this paper aside for a little bit later. All right, so the next part is the legend. All right, so what is a legend? The legend is the part of the map that shows information to the person looking at the map and helps you interpret any symbols that are on the map. And they can be just a title and a description of what the map is. They can be small and a little bit of information, like how far a mile is on the map. That's called the scale of the map. And then maybe what some of the things mean, or they can be super complex with a lot of information. I'm going to show you how to draw your legend, but if you wanted to type yours up and print it out, that's also something you can do. There's lots of choices in this project. And again, now that we know what a legend is, we can start designing it. And now some of you might be thinking, Mrs. Hagen, I don't have any information to put in a legend on mine. Yours could just be a title banner then, saying where your project is going to be. If you want to, you could do the legend part after you do the actual map part, and then you can use it to do the symbols that are inside of your map. And I'll show you in a little bit how you can add things to your legend. So just like you did for your compass rose, pick a color, okay, and start working on what you want it to look like, and you can do more than one. It is okay to make lots of different designs and pick out your one for later. One of the questions that I'm sure a lot of you are asking are, Mrs. Hagen, I want to do one of those really cool scrolls. How do I draw that? So it's actually a little bit easier than you think it is. You just take your crayon and you start with a spiral, and then you drag the spiral down and loop back up with it. And that's one side of the paper. And then you do the same thing. Oops, I did that spiral backwards. It's easy, Mrs. Hagen, you said so. You do the spiral the other direction for the other side. Okay, so see how this one, it's like that. Don't do it like that up there. Do it like this one down here. And then you put a little line in to show that that's the back of the paper. And then a line kind of that way and that way to show that it's the bottom. And you end up with one of those scrolly papers. If you want to do it across the top, you can do it that way too. And then it's just the same process. I have a hard time doing mine sideways. And then you kind of get one of those scrolly papers. Okay. Once you have this shape, you can start adding some stuff to the top of it. Okay. I'm just going to be adding the title to London because my picture is going to be of a trip, or at least telling the story of a trip to London. And for right now, that's all I'm adding to mine. I will add the other little symbols and things later on. Like I said, you could stop for now and then just add your details to it later. That is a choice that you have. So go ahead and work on some legends. And when you get those done, come on back to learn the next step. All right, guys, so the next step is actually drawing your map. And this is a bit of fun because you get to decide where everything goes on the map and how you're going to add it all in. So my project, like I said before, is going to be the trip of me and my husband taking a trip to London together. So I'm going to start over here on what would be the west side of the paper because my journey is going to go east across the paper. If you were going south, maybe you would start at the top and work down. There's lots of different choices. And what I'm kind of going to do is I'm going to start with making like the big land masses. And I know the big land mass over here kind of looks like that. All right, so if I wanted that to look a little bit more realistic, I could do some research and then add it in later. And I knew that England, the landmass kind of looks like And then there's like the rest of Europe down here. And you can change colors. So when I started this trip, we started at our apartment. I'm just going to draw a big apartment building over here. Okay, and then we went to London, and most people think about London as being the place that has that great big clock tower. So that's one of the things that I'm going to add to show that. And I could add the London Eye. And the really cool thing about this map, guys, is it's not meant to be realistic. If you really wanted it to be, yes, you could do some research and you could do some other things. Like I could put that Paris is over here somewhere by making the Eiffel Tower. And I could color that in. I'd also put the English flag up here and color it in. And maybe I show that like I'm near Washington, D.C. with the D.C. monument and a couple of other things. And then we flew in an airplane to get there. So I am going to make a line and add an airplane to it. Then, of course, this is all ocean in here. And in those old-time maps that we looked at, we saw that in the oceans, they had things like sea monsters and boats and that sort of thing. And if that's what you want to do, go for it. I'm going to leave my map pretty simplistic so that I can move on to the next step with you guys, which is actually the last step. But if you want to make yours super, super realistic, you can do that. You can take a lot of time to add lots of details. And whenever you're done, you just come back for the next step, which is actually a micro step of how to finish the legend. So whenever you're ready to do that, you just come back and learn. All right, so finishing that legend. In mine, the only thing that I feel like I really need to explain to people that are looking at it, because it's kind of obvious that this is supposed to be London and then this is supposed to be DC and Paris is down here. If you know about those places, that's obvious, but this line, not so much. So I'm going to use my legend to make a purple line. Okay. And then I write what it is. And I'll just use another color, and it's going to be path traveled. If you have train tracks in yours, you could make the train track line and then write train tracks. If you have roads, you could make your roads lines and show roads. If you want to show the difference between a bus and something else, you could draw the bus and say, hey, this is a bus. If you are mapping out maybe your backyard, you could show the colors of this is the color that I used to show flower beds. This is the colors that I used to show something else. It doesn't have to be super, super complex. It can be very, very simple. I could even just go, hey, look. Plain. Okay. Easy peasy. All right, are we ready to put it all together? Putting it all together involves having all of your papers together, and mine are all over my table because I spread out to work, a pair of scissors, and some glue to stick it together. If you want to do all of this on the same paper, you can kind of build as you go. So maybe you draw your compass rose and your legend at the bottom of your paper and then your map around that, and that's okay. You can totally do that. You can also decide how much you cut out. For example, I could just cut a circle around my compass rose, or I could take the time to cut out all of the little pieces. That is very much up to you. As I said before, a lot of this project, guys, is up to how you want to do it. If you want it to be super abstract and you want everything to be done from memory, go ahead and do that. If you want it to be super detailed and very much like real life and you want to do some research, go ahead and do that. There's lots of different choices. So for me, the only things I needed to cut out were my compass rose and my legend. I'm also going to cut this little spiral bit off of the top of my map because I don't like the way it looks on top of my artwork. I got my paper out of a sketchbook, so that's why it had that little spirally bit. And then I just get to decide where the stuff goes. Maybe I do it like that. Maybe the compass rose goes up here. It's okay if it overlaps something that you did and the legend goes at the bottom. You get lots of choices of how you put them on because it's your project. Maybe the legend just goes right in the middle and the compass rose goes over here. Or maybe I decide I don't want to use this compass rose. I want to draw it on instead. And that is also okay. You guys have lots and lots of choices, like I said, on how you do this. You can map a trip. You can map your backyard. You could make a map of your house. You could make a map of just your neighborhood. You could make a map of an imaginary place. You could make a map of the moon. There are lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of choices for this project. So basically, when you put it all together, what you're doing is you are picking a place to make a map for, making a compass rose, making a legend, making a map, and then putting it all together. You guys ready to get up at this table and go do a thing? All right, go do a thing.